it's time to reaffirm a simple but powerful truth that our country's destiny and the destinies of many of us and the businesses that we're on cannot be divorced from integrity. Our prosperity, our global standing, our security, our national cohesion all hinge on integrity.
Integrity enhances the effectiveness of governance by promoting fairness, justice, and adherence to the rule of law. It is a distinguishing factor between developed and underdeveloped countries. For Nigeria, a country with abundant human and natural resources, its potential to be a leading global economy has been limited by corruption and weak institutions, which requires integrity and accountability to be entrenched in the code of governance. For 3 decades, the Integrity Organization has played a pivotal role in driving the advocacy for integrity in Nigeria, gaining traction with stakeholders from the public and private sector. At the 2025 National Integrity Conference, it was an opportunity for stock taking on the integrity drive in Nigeria. The CEO of Integrity Organization, Mr. Soji Apampa, led the conversation on the journey of integrity advocacy with a keynote presentation by Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, former Vice President of Nigeria.
In the first year of the reform, we had sacked 22 magistrates for corrupt practices, 22. 3 judges were also sacked upon the recommendation of the NJC, to which their cases had been referred. We simply referred any case of corruption, we simply referred to the NJC, and we waited for a recommendation, and we abided by whatever that recommendation was. By the year 2000, a follow-up survey was done on 200 lawyers again, just the same survey we did in 1999. 0% of lawyers at the time perceived the judiciary as corrupt. 0% from 89%. That report, the report of the reform, judicial sector reform in Lagos State, is published by the World Bank. The World Bank published a report titled Repairing a Car While the Engine is Running. Repairing a car while the engine is running, the Lagos State Judicial Service Reforms. That report is a 2007 report. I think that the important thing and the important element of that is that we can reform the public sector, but it takes political will. It takes political will. Without political will, even the judiciary cannot really reform itself. And when I say political will, I refer first and foremost to the executive. The executive must have the will to reform. The Lagos State judiciary reforms is a small segment, and there's no way of saying that that necessarily answers the questions of how to make bigger reform. But it's important just in terms of how the reform was carried out and why it was successful. We believe that we could be that generation that would be the end of corruption in our nation. We really strongly held that view. But evidently, that is not the case. But the dream is still alive and perhaps even burns brighter today than when the date when the organization was founded. And that paradox of a great country with a stubborn perception of corruption is not merely a contradiction, it is crossroads for us as a country. It is the tension between perception and reality, the reality of what is possible. And I believe that it is entirely possible. But much remains to be done. There's a lot that we must do. But the past 30 years have proved something important, that the work of integrity is not futile. It is foundational and catalytic. There must be innovation, creativity around building anti-corruption systems for the private and public sectors. And there must be constant reminders that integrity or lack of integrity will defeat the greatest dreams. So as we mark this 30-year milestone, I believe it's time to reaffirm a simple but powerful truth that our country's destiny and the destinies of many of us and the businesses that we're on cannot be divorced from integrity. Our prosperity, our global standing, our security, our national cohesion all hinge on integrity.
Mrs. Ibukun Awoshika, founder, the Chair Center, led the tribute for late Dr. Christopher Koladi, who was a champion of integrity and governance in Nigeria. The event featured goodwill messages from dignitaries.
Starting from the grassroots, not stopping there, to build institutional capacity, set standard operating procedures, and then teach every partner in the value chain, the transactional value chain of the maritime sector, how to transform their institutional systems and how to make sure that people coming into the sector for the first time, or those who are in the sector, develop new ways of working that's different from the old ways. If you know anything about change management, that's difficult to do. So for us, that was how we identified a partner we could work with for the long term, because they did not only dismantle a problem, but they then started to rebuild and teach and train and handhold all of the stakeholders in the sector. So the charge really is, how do we close the gap? And I do hope that as part of today's deliberations, that will be it. It isn't that 30 years hasn't been great, but I think the point we are making is that so much more is required.
As we honor accountability, let us prepare the young people that will defend it. As we envision a new Nigeria, let us empower the young people that will build it. On behalf of Latif Jakande Leadership Academy, we're proud to stand with partners like Integrity Organization, who understand leadership is a legacy work. Slow, steady, and deeply human. May integrity not be what we preach, but what the next generation can inherit from us.
A robust panel session discussed the prospects for deepening integrity across Nigeria.
There was a man considered a man of integrity that led this country. We never got out of the gray list. In fact, we replaced his so-called integrity with incompetence. That's how you measure these things very carefully. So to answer your question, Mr. Soja Papa, because you're a co-founder and you brought me into this project so many years ago. When we talk about integrity and we talk about innovation, they are not mutually exclusive. But the way we present them is that we add it like a layer on top of what we are discussing. Over time, life just moves in cycles. We confuse cycles with trends, but the cycles are there. The triggers for what we are facing, like today, where we are facing the largest transfer of wealth in the history of mankind, ongoing as we speak. We are not talking about innovation because the trigger occurred almost 4 or 5 years ago. We are playing catch up. But Nigeria as a country is in a much stronger position. So the role of integrity, as we talk about right now, is that whenever we talk about people coming up with innovation, there are some few measurements which you adjust to the integrity standard. Things like character, things like reference. And that's why you find most of your startups are almost shutting down because they just steal money and move away. Because we left all those space, because we are using the old models of integrity, which our funders or our supporters have always given to us.
In our traditional communities, corruption is not acceptable. Have you ever seen anyone who in a village will take the ram or the goat that is meant for the village festival and steal it and will leave? Very unlikely. And before, if you wanted to get married and you go home and tell your parents, you know, this guy and I are dating. In fact, before you come and say you want to marry, once they start seeing you together, what will your family do? They will investigate the other person's family and check out their history, their records, their values, and all of that. And based on that alone, your family can say you cannot or you can. Honestly, we left what was right, abandoned it, and chose what is wrong, and we're paying the price. So it's really, whether those who live abroad or the largest population of us who live in Nigeria, how do we as a community reaffirm what our truth is? What is our right? What is our wrong? What is acceptable? And help these 70% of our population, that's where we have our biggest problem, young Nigerians, to truly know the history of the value system of who we are, rather than what they've seen. And how do we stop celebrating people for doing the wrong things?
Some of the dignitaries and stakeholders shared their perspective on how integrity can be embedded in sectors like creative art, finance, and governance.
Strongly believe that culture is the soil for integrity to grow. And what that means is that culture controls the consciousness of people. So this goes beyond systems. It means that you can create systems, you can create structures. But if the consciousness of people is not that of integrity, they would always find a way around things, or they could damn the circumstance, these consequences. Now, that being said, the arts, the creative industry plays a crucial role in shaping culture through storytelling, through narratives that inflames in us, arouse in us national consciousness, that makes us realize where we're coming from, our history, our indigenous ethics, our heroes, our role models, because we seem to not have many of these role models, but we actually do. Where are they? Why are their stories not being told? So through the creative arts, we reconnect back to whom we are, where we are coming from, and where we should be going as people. And that in itself would really shape how far we go in terms of integrity. Yeah.
I will say the one thing that we need to understand is finance, whether it's climate finance or vanilla or whatever. But the one thing that climate finance does stand out when it talks about integrity, we talk about ESG, environment, social, and governance. And I think the governance aspect of it is where we typically fall over. I often say to people that we've been doing environment for a very long time. We're social people. We don't have a uh, officially social network, but we are our brother's keeper. However, if you don't look after the governance side of things, everything else falls over. And when you talk about integrity, what exactly is integrity in climate financing? You talk about criteria that you use to select projects. You talk about the process for selecting the projects. You talk about the framework for managing the money. And you talk about the reporting. We tend to fall over on the reporting side because we hadn't taken into consideration or be more aware of the criteria required. So when you spend enough time ensuring that you are compliant with the criteria for selecting projects, and you are true to, you speak to truth, as it were, and you comply with the various processes, have the right people in the room for making the selection of these projects, have the right people in the room for defining the framework, have the right people in the room to ensure that all the data you require and the competency is developed internally. Then what happens is that it becomes a lot easier for you to manage the money that is being put in your custody, and you apply it appropriately. You don't give money to projects because your brother is the one running the project or because you have a party government, be it in public sector or private sector. What you do is ensure that the investor gets value for money. And in order to prove that, is you ensure that you report against the criteria for which the money has been given to you. And so the reporting side is very important. So we talk about the MRV, which is the monitoring, the reporting, and the verification. And one of the things we do in climate financing or green finance or sustainable finance, whatever it is you want to call it, is the essence of external verification. When you bring external parties to verify the work that you have done, what it does two things. One, it ensures that the process you put in place will stand the test of time. But more importantly, to your point, it will now give investors confidence to know that the way the money is being used is used appropriately. What that does is that it enables them now to give more money. We often say the reward of work, hard work, or good work is more work. Well, guess what? The reward of good investment, right, and good returns is also more money available to you.
Part of this is about the systems. What are the systems that we've got in place to be able to build on some of the conversation that we've heard today? Now, integrity over a long period of time becomes a thing that we can really rely on in public office or in a political sense because there's been systems. and over a period of time been refined to get to where it is. But I don't think that in Nigeria that we've not started building the system. I do believe celebrating 30 years, there are systems that have been built. But the issue here is, do we have the vision to maintain and to keep it going on the long term? Because, for example, talking from an Islington point of view, the systems that we have in place are always getting refined. But because things have been so refined over a period of time, and bear in mind, this is taking many, many, many years. And sometimes there is a point there to talk about the fact that we need to be a little bit more patient with the work that's been going on. Because, for example, in Islington, there is still accountability, which is very clear, and the processes of how you can hold people accountable is quite there. Freedom of information. You can request to know what any public office person is doing, any information or conversation or meeting that was done, even emails. These are things you can easily get. I'm not saying we're not doing that in Nigeria, but can it be enforced, right? That process, like, to put it again in Islington context, you had a situation where people can request for freedom of information. It would take much longer. But what's been refined is how can people get those information a lot more faster than how they used to. So really, to me, we're not saying that the Western point of view or in a point of Islington are the best, but there are things that we can take to apply. And also we need to really build on encouraging young people to stand up, speak the truth, be comfortable with the truth, be comfortable knowing that there is nothing wrong standing for what is right, and don't give up and don't give in to the fact that Nigerian process is a corrupt process, and because there are good people out there. So the more good people that can connect together, the better it will be.
The key takeaway is that globally, nationally, we still have a challenge. And the challenge is this. Many young people are settling down, doing their own thing. They're getting successful and they're moving on with their life. And we hope that it will also translate into their character. They are the integrity generation. They're not waiting for you or anybody else. They're doing their own thing. But then there's another group of young people at home, and the people at home are thinking, perhaps this corruption thing can still work for me. So should it be changed before it's my time? And maybe we should wait, because if they're all getting rich doing it, why should I change it? So allow this thing. Now there's a tension between the two, and we're wondering which future is the scenario that Nigeria is going to follow. The integrity generation, where things are done better and character changes and Nigeria just takes off, or those who continue with business as usual. And I think what we have discussed today is that we need connections between London, the borough of Islington, Nigeria and the village. We all need to come together and support one another to be able to weather the storm and bridge the gap and make sure that this middle, where people are leaving things and allowing corruption because they're unsure whether to get rid of it will pay them, that we make that history and we do the right things and we do things right.
The Integrity Organization has played a pivotal role in the last 3 decades, building trust, promoting ethical governance, and shaping a new narrative for Nigeria. It is commendable and expected that the young generation takes the challenge of driving the advocacy for integrity to transform Nigeria's socio-economic landscape and achieve an inclusive society